Hello people, I am Jaby KOAY, joined by ACHARA KIRK.
Hi guys.
And we are finally going to do our spoiler discussion for Avengers Endgame. This is going to be full-on spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, it will get totally spoiled for you. So I strongly recommend you don't watch this if you haven't seen the film yet. Please go watch it first and then watch this video. Okay, so here we go. It's a 3-hour film and there's so much to unpack here. I'll start out with saying that I absolutely love this movie.
Yeah.
It went immediately into my list of favorite films. I came out the theater just so happy, and I don't remember being that happy since watching Whiplash. Whiplash, for those of you who don't know, is my all-time favorite film, at least right now. I don't remember the last time other than Whiplash that I felt this happy watching a movie. It was just so good. They covered all their bases. They set up things I didn't even realize they were setting up, and then they paid it off. It didn't just pay off things within its own film, it paid off things from all the previous installments.
Yeah.
In such an effective way. Like, we're talking, what, 11 years of films here?
Yeah.
22 movies? I'm like, how they were able to bring all this together as effectively as they did, I'm just like, applaud. I wake up applauding them in my brain. I'm like,
Yeah.
how did they freaking do this? We've seen it twice now, and the second time we watched it was in 3D. Thank you to Real D 3D, first of all, for inviting us to that influencer screening. I thought that in 3D, it made the movie even better.
It was way more immersive, for sure.
There were little things that I picked up on that I wouldn't have otherwise when Tony Stark was in space, and just the way his ship popped out from the background, the galaxy or whatever, the stars in the background. I was like, wow, that's really neat. You see Thanos in his armor just had this shininess to it that was more apparent that I didn't notice the first time around. It made the CGI look even nicer. There were so many little things when Thanos first rains hellfire on the Avengers main base after Ant-Man was like, oh my gosh, I think it worked. That whole thing. When you see the missiles going past the camera, it looked so much more lifelike. So if you haven't seen this in 3D, if you haven't given 3D a chance in a while, I strongly recommend taking a chance on Avengers Endgame in 3D. Real D 3D. It is so beautiful. The movie's beautiful already, and then Real D 3D just takes it to a whole new level. I'm not BSing you. This is not a sales pitch. Like, Real D is not paying me to say this. I genuinely mean this. Like, as I was watching it, I'm like, wow, this looks so much nicer than the first time I saw it. Having watched it twice, it's given me a chance to like really reflect on how I feel about it. And the second time watching it, usually I'll find things where I'm like, yeah, I guess that wasn't as cool the second time. But everything I felt the first time, I felt the second time.
Yes.
So before I like keep hogging this mic, I'm gonna give you a chance to express some of your thoughts about this.
I loved this movie as well. Like you said, it paid everything off really well, but most importantly for me, I think it just gave us more of an opportunity to see these heroes as real people, as characters with great character arcs and failings and trying to overcome their difficulties and where they failed. And I think they did that really well. And there was just some stunning acting all around.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean,
yeah.
The first time I watched it, I cried in different parts of the, I was gonna say throughout, but that's not really true. It's like I cried in different areas.
Yeah.
Not full on crying, right? It was just like, I got emotional when Ant-Man, because he goes, you know, I was in there for 5 hours and, you know, she was supposed to pull me out, and he's trying to talk about his girlfriend, and he can't quite say it.
That she's gone.
That she's gone.
It's so raw.
Yeah, he's so just like, he's dying inside knowing this, and it's killing him. And the way that Paul Rudd played that, I was just like, whoa, he's making me choke up. And when he sees his daughter, who's grown up, the way he's playing it, like I had no idea he could make me feel things the way he made me feel.
Yeah.
When, what's his name, sees that phone. Hawkeye, I can't remember the actor's name for the life of me.
Jeremy
Renner, when he sees the phone and his voice is like, he can barely speak at realizing that his wife's back.
Yeah.
Like, those things just touched me so much.
I think the thing is, it's really smart of them to have made this more of a family drama, because we all love the epicness of Avengers and the epicness of Infinity War. But now this is very epic, but it's also very focused on just the family aspect. You've got Iron Man and his new family, the family of the Avengers, Hawkeye's family. Family is something that we can all understand. We can really hook into that and get emotional about it.
One of the things that you're touching on there that was allowed to happen here was because of its length. It was a 3-hour movie, and initially I think we all were like, gosh, like, really? It's 3 hours? The first time I watched it and the second time I watched it, those 3 hours flew by. I didn't even feel the 3 hours, and the reason why is because I was so emotionally invested in everything happening that when it was taking its time, I was happy it was taking its time. This is gonna sound weird, but the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings, supposedly when Peter Jackson and what's his name were shooting the final scene, Frodo, that actor, Elijah Wood, when they were shooting the final scene from Lord of the Rings, like the final scene, Peter Jackson kept doing take after take after take, even though they got it in the can, because he was so emotional. And I feel like, on some level at least, the directors were emotional about parting with Tony Stark, because they gave him this moment at the very beginning where he like lays down because he's so tired, and he's been in the ship for 21 days or whatever, and it took its time there, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting that it's taking its time. And I felt in that moment, I'm like, he's gonna die. And I felt sad. It's like I felt all kinds of emotions just seeing him lay there, and he looked frail. I don't know. There was just things in my head in that moment watching the movie. And then what's her name puts him, Nebula puts him against the chair, and it's like I thought that was really sweet the way that whole relationship developed. I would have almost liked to have seen what was going on during those 21 days just between them.
You got a sense of it, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of like random game playing.
I liked that.
Yeah, it was cute.
I thought that was cool. Most of whatever complaints I had in previous Marvel installments were resolved here, except for one thing, and that was during the Captain America versus Captain America fight. Like, I lost my shit like everybody else did during that fight.
That was so cool.
Just seeing that possibility, seeing that happen, and just the boldness of it, the ambition of it. I'm like, this is awesome. But then it did this really choppy editing and stuff where I'm like, oh man, I can't appreciate this fight scene. Funny enough, like I know the people who made that fight scene, and so all I can say is that I feel like the editing did a disservice to the fight choreography. Because did you notice it the second time?
Yeah.
Like, it was very choppy.
Yeah.
That's not true of the other fights in the movie. So what I'm imagining happened there is that they had to like determine where to tactically put their money. And it was like, do we put more money here in this Cap versus Cap fight, or do we put more money on this end with that epic war sequence?
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm like, well, if I had to choose between the two, obviously I'm going to choose this one over here.
Yeah.
Even though it's this, one of the, if not the biggest movie of the decade, they don't have an infinite amount of money to make this movie, right? And so I'm imagining they eventually reached budget constraints, and it was showing for me in that Cap versus Cap fight, because you have Chris Evans versus Chris Evans, and to make that look right is obviously very expensive. But that being said, emotionally, it still got me. Like, when he says, I can do this all day, and Chris Evans is like, I know. Like, that was just such a wonderful moment. Now, speaking of like the epic war sequence, leading into that was just one of the most emotional and exhilarating scenes I've ever experienced, especially with an audience that's just like watching it for the first time. Like, it was so mesmerizing and so amazing, and so just like, it was like a roller coaster when the music was like reaching its crescendo and you see the two armies facing each other.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is the moment where the commercial usually ends and you don't get to see what happens. And I'm like, no, but now we're finally seeing what happens. And the way they executed that whole war sequence was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I was really afraid, like, because it's, there's this emotional investment in what's happening, and you're seeing all the heroes and all the villains, and I'm thinking, this is gonna be a mess. Like, there's no way. There's no way you can make this, like, you can pay off what you're building up here,
Yeah, and there's so many as well, and they got everyone.
Right, just the way it was shot, the way it was choreographed, the fight scenes. I was floored by how they did the Thanos fight scene, because I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, this guy, he's not real. It's a CGI character, and yet I feel invested in this fight scene that's going on with these characters. Megan Leigh, her husband, came to the second screening, and he's a stunt coordinator, a fight scene choreographer, and he was impressed with it. I'm like, if he's impressed, then all my feelings are totally justified, because I was impressed, because like he's like me, he's got a very critical eye. And so for him to be just as happy as I was, I'm like, wow, okay. So this movie really worked in terms of like the action. Like I said, the way they shot that whole sequence at the end, where they really gave everybody their screen time.
I think that's the great thing about it being 3 hours as well, is you never really felt, or at least I didn't, that various storylines were rushed. I felt like everyone got their due justice.
Right.
At least for the original Avengers team.
Right. There was this one moment in the film that made all the ladies cheer, which is when you see all the female characters coming together. And I thought that was a little bit funny, and it happened in the previous Avengers as well, Infinity War, where you saw all the females coming together. I'm like, yeah, so it just so happens that all of them are at the same place at the same time. Oh, okay.
But okay, I know that you found it a little bit cringy, and
just a tiny bit.
Yeah, and I get it. It is a little bit of fan service and virtue signaling and whatnot. But you cannot deny that the way they shot that looked
Oh, it looked
freaking
great.
cool.
It looked great.
The way like it started on a few of them and then more and more of them joined in and they're like, we got you, boo.
Yeah.
Let's go. This relay race is on.
Right. No, the compound camera movement was incredible. I liked that. I like the movement. I mean, the Russo brothers are, So, what the thing is, the reason why I didn't really care for it is because I already felt girl power by the time that happened.
That's true.
Multiple times over. When Peppa shows up and she's fighting side by side with Tony, I was already like, whoa! Like, that was so cool.
I was not expecting her to show up.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was one of the things I was talking about where they set this up and you didn't realize they set it up.
Yeah.
And then it comes back, you're like, oh, wow, like, I didn't even think about that at all.
Because of the mask he was making for her, right? And he's like,
right.
Mummy never wears anything that I buy her anyway.
There was this standoff between Scarlet Witch and Thanos, and I was like, that right there for me was like incredible female power because she had Thanos so scared that he asked for Hellfire. Like, because he was like being pulled apart, his armor, that whole stuff. So, like, Scarlet Witch looked badass. And I just wanted more of that. Like,
I know, but where was that in Infinity War? Like, when you could have saved Vision. Where was that, Scarlet Witch?
She was, I don't know. Who?
Maybe the tragedy gave her an extra oomph in her powers.
I don't know.
That was badass.
But speaking of which, like, I remember feeling I liked Infinity War, but part of me felt a little bit underwhelmed in watching it. I'm like, okay, this was good, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I did, like, because it was just after Black Panther. And I remember the exhilaration of Black Panther and how amazing it felt. Walking out of that movie, it was great. But then walking out of Avengers, I'm like, okay.
It's a good movie.
Well, it did all the things I thought it was going to do. It was unexpected that Black Panther was turned to dust and Spider-Man was turned to dust. Like, all that stuff was unexpected, but, it was just like, okay, well, that happened. I felt like that war sequence on Wakanda was a little bit underwhelming, and I'm like, why does it feel so small? It feels small for some reason. And then here, obviously, like, they were saving it for this.
Right.
Where you see every freaking buddy with all the portals and everyone's coming through the portals. I'm like, oh my God. It's just the sheer size of it. And it's like, the movie really earned it, is the thing. It's like, by the time we got there, we've been through so much. And can we talk about Fat Thor? I love Fat Thor.
I love Fat Thor.
Fat Thor was my favorite character in the whole movie. I saw some articles online criticizing, like, how it's using, the fat jokes and poking fun at fat people. I'm like, whatever, man. Like, I just liked how he was a broken man.
Yes.
He was super broken, and when he came back, he was still Fat Thor. Like,
but he still kicked ass, and that's what I appreciated. Because I think at the back of our minds, all of us were thinking, okay, well, he's joined the team now, and they're gonna go and sort everything out. So, yeah, he's gonna work out and lose weight, and by the time the epic battle comes around, he's gonna be like fighting shape Thor.
Yeah.
But instead, he's just like this badass, bigger Thor, proving that actually he doesn't need to look a certain way to have that power. That power is within him, and it was within him all along.
It's probably more closer to what Vikings looked like anyway.
True.
But for me, it was a testament to just his acting.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Hemsworth's acting, I've only recently realized how much I adore him as an actor.
Yes.
I mean, like, I was thinking about it just this morning because I went to an audition where I had to pretend I was a dad and was a baby who was not. It's not really a baby; it's a doll. And as I walked into the audition feeling funny, I'm like, well, Chris Hemsworth was acting opposite of what the hell ever it was when he was acting with Rocket and crying. I'm like, well, if he can do that, surely I can pretend this baby's a baby.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, he was tearing up talking to Rocket, and in my brain, I'm going, there's no Rocket there. Whatever is there is not Rocket. It doesn't actually have. If anything, it was like a cardboard just for representation, and like that just shows his amazing commitment as an actor to be able to constantly be in that emotional state while saying these funny lines. It's like, I totally am from the future, but he had such commitment in the line. It's like the reason why that was funny was because we believed him.
Yeah, and I have to say that scene with his mom was one of my favorite scenes.
That was one of your favorite scenes, despite you not liking her English accent.
Exactly. I mean, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, her acting's great.
Yeah, her acting's great, yeah.
Renee Russo's acting's great. Her accent at times was a bit iffy, but I forgave that because the scene was beautiful. To have that moment, to be able to go back in time to see your mother who you love dearly, like, it's making me tear up just talking about it. Right. And having her be like, I see that you're in trouble and let me help you through this. And she really did. He came out the other side and was Thor again.
I loved Thor's storyline.
Yes.
I loved Chris Hemsworth's acting. Everything with Thor just made him my favorite character in the movie. But just to wrap up, the fat joke thing, like, there was one review where I saw commenting about, the cheese whiz thing that Don Cheadle says. Like, that didn't annoy me because it was a fat joke. It annoyed me because it just wasn't a great joke. Like, for me, it kind of undercut the emotional state of the situation.
Right, and that happens a lot. It's very kind of Marvel.
It was very dialed back here, though, compared to most Marvel films. Like, they didn't undercut the drama as much as they normally do, which I really appreciated. The Cheese Whiz line just wasn't a great line to me. It just wasn't funny. It's not because it was a fat joke. Like, to me, in that kind of environment, you are going to have people who are making dudes are going to make jokes like that with each other. I'm not mad at the fat jokes. It's just like, it is, that's what dudes do to each other. They're kind of aggressive with each other. If you're going to be upset about that, you're just going to be upset about reality. That's just the reality of how men treat each other. It's how we show each other love.
And I just think it was interesting that they decided to take it that direction.
Well,
because the whole time he's been Thor, the perfect man.
Right.
And now he's like, I'm just a dude.
Right.
I've got problems too.
I mentioned earlier that I cried, at different parts of the film. The part that had me cry in both viewings was Iron Man's death.
Oh, gosh.
Both instances. The first time I watched it, and Iron Man takes the Infinity Stones. I knew what was coming. And even just like from the look between him and Doctor Strange, I'm like, oh God, is this it?
Yeah.
And so he gets the Infinity Stones and he's got it in his hand. I was already getting choked up because I'm like, this is it. He's gonna go. He's gonna go. I feel it. This is where the ship hits the freaking iceberg. And then he does it. He snaps his fingers and then he comes out of it. It hits the wall and I'm like, oh God, oh God, oh God.
Yeah.
It was like watching a friend die. It was so horrifying and so upsetting for me, even though like we all knew that Robert Downey Jr. was on his way out, but he played it with such commitment. It was so real. Like, obviously, he's a great actor. And he couldn't even speak. Like, he couldn't say a single word because he was so destroyed from the Infinity Stones. And then, like, his light goes out. Like, all the little things, the Spider-Man coming back and being like, Mr. Stark. Yeah. And, like, it was the reverse from Infinity War. Yeah. And then Pepper coming in. And it's just all of the things.
I loved it when Pepper came in because, you get that really sweet moment between the two of them, and she's like, we're gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Like, shit.
Just
I can't. I'm still emotional just even thinking about that. It's such a real moment because it's a human moment as opposed to it being like, oh, this is a superhero moment. This is like, no, this is a husband and a wife, a father and a mother, and she's saying like, you can go now.
Yeah. I mean, and all of that was really earned because the movie spent time letting you get really connected with each of the characters. It didn't rush through anything in the film. And yet, even though it didn't rush, it didn't feel like it wasted any time.
No.
Everything was very poignant and there for a reason, and it was all at the service of the story. In most of the time, for me, it just like emotionally was one of the most satisfying films ever.
Yeah.
I had to hold back cry. I was like, because like I was wearing the 3D glasses and I'm crying. I'm like,
oh my gosh,
my
3D glasses got all foggy.
Yeah, me
I was
too.
Crying so much.
I was like, I can't see anything. I can't. Oh God. And there was like this really big dude in front of me, and he was crying. I'm like, man, if he's crying, we're all fucked. Like, we're all going. Because you associate big guys with being tough.
Yeah.
You know.
It's like.
Yeah, I heard him like choking. I heard people choking all around me. I'm like, God damn it, you all are choking.
I heard people sobbing in the first screening we went to watch. I thought it was you.
It was me and Courtney. Yeah, Courtney was next to me. I heard her. Yeah, that was. Yeah, we were both. I was a wreck.
I was like, wow.
I was a wreck. The fact that a superhero film could make me feel that way.
Like, hats off. What about Natasha Romanoff's death? Did you see that coming? Black Widow?
No, I thought Jeremy Renner was gonna go. For some reason, I was expecting Jeremy Renner to go. I don't know why. I guess because the dudes are usually the one to sacrifice themselves, and that's another moment where I was like, that to me represents incredible female power. That she's like, no, I'm going, dude.
Right.
And she was strong enough to get him back and sacrifice herself. Like, she was making the choice. She's like, no, I'm gonna do this. This is what I want.
In my mind, I was like, it made the most sense for her to go because the Avengers are her family, but in terms of like, did she have children or a husband or a wife to go back to? She didn't, whereas Hawkeye had a whole family. I could see why she would make that sacrifice, but it was just incredibly heartbreaking as well, because I really like Black Widow.
The moment afterwards when Jeremy Renner comes back and it's just silence, and it's just long, lingering silence, I'm like, God, this feels so real. And then it cuts when Hulk hits the floor, and then they're all out there at the lake. The way it allowed you to grieve over and over again, like the film gives you moments to grieve, and I thought that was incredible that it did that for you, because it's like, it was almost like the film knew what you wanted it to do.
Yeah.
In terms of like giving you moments to like deal with this. Like you're dealing with the fact that this character's gone. And when Hulk took the bench and tossed it, that in any other circumstance could have been goofy and weird. But because it was taking his time and the way it was handled, it was just like, no, everything felt appropriate. Speaking of which, I thought Hulk was awesome. This is my favorite iteration of Hulk, the combined, the best of both worlds. And the way Hulk was responding to things, like when he went into 2012, during the first Avengers film, and he sees his old self.
Yeah.
And then Tony's like, can you like smash some things?
And he's like cringing.
He goes, oh God, I feel like that's a little bit gratuitous, but all right. I loved Hulk in this.
Yeah.
I thought the CGI on Hulk was great, and the way he was played, like the fact that I could get emotional as well about, CGI Hulk. I'm like, wow, this is craziness. Just like, what is pulling at my heartstrings in this movie? It's just bananas. By the way, I mean, the whole thing is about time travel, and I was a little bit, if there was any criticism I have of the film, that would be one thing, whereas I just got a little bit lost with the rules. They kept telling me what the rules were, then throwing it out, and then doing it again. I'm like, the movie's literally telling you, like, don't worry. Just go with it. Just go with it.
Yeah,
like,
it's fine.
All right, fine.
I think I did kind of break my brain a little bit, especially with the whole future Nebula killing past Nebula. And I was like, no, but they already said it's not like Back to the Future. So I just have to accept that her killing herself doesn't kill her future self.
Right.
Because if it was Back to the Future, she would have.
Well, she wouldn't have even been there. They sort of explained it in that there were alternate timelines.
Yes, exactly. So your future becomes your past. Yeah. So your past becomes your future. So it's like, whatever. I'm like, okay, I buy it.
With any time travel film, you sort of have to be like, all right, I'm not going to think about this too hard.
Yeah, just don't.
It sort of breaks you. We haven't talked about the laughter that we had in this film. Like,
yes,
it was
so much.
There were so many good laughs, so many guffaws I had. The way it hit me in all the areas emotionally, and the way the action was so well executed. Like, this is just one of the best movies ever made. The fact that they were able to pull off, like, even like 60% of this, the fact that they were able to come anywhere near the level that they did with this movie is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the undertaking. Like,
I mean, it's such a tall order. Can you imagine just the level of pressure? Everyone has been anticipating this movie and waiting for it. If they only delivered 70% of how good this was, I think I would have come out of it going, oh, that was a good movie.
Yeah.
But they delivered above and beyond with this movie. I'm just flabbergasted.
I just feel like there's no way you can top this. That's me being kind of myopic, I suppose, but like, I just feel like you can't. Like, how do you, this is not just, the movie itself, it's all the movies leading up to it that make it what it is.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, I don't want to call it fan service, but it is going back to previous installments in order to tell its story. And so to fully appreciate the film, you do have to see those previous installments.
It helps,
for it to feel well-rounded. But even, with all that, it was such an amazing film. And, normally when I watch a film the second time, I'm like bored, but I wasn't bored the second time. I was still enjoying all those beats. Nothing will compare to the first experience and that first audience, because we watched it at 9 a.m. Like we were amongst like the very first people to see it. Just the feeling that we all had collectively was amazing. I had that experience again, but like to a lesser degree, but it was still very thoroughly enjoyable. So I'm looking forward to watching it in IMAX. And again, you guys, if you haven't seen it in 3D, that's a great way to watch this movie. I strongly recommend it in 3D. It was popping in all the right ways, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
I guess the last two things to talk about is Thanos and Captain Marvel. They did a really good job in Captain Marvel of setting up why she's not there. They set up, again, here in this film, why she's not there. They bring her in at the last second of the battle when she's like the ace in the hole.
Right, yeah.
She's not a Deus Ex Machina. She's an ace in the hole that she comes back at the most crucial, critical moment that they need her to come back. And she's just like flying through the ships and stuff like that. I thought that was great. As I predicted, I liked her more here than I did in her own solo film.
Yeah.
I thought she was so much better here. As I like the little haircut she had. I like, that whole stuff. I like that moment when Thanos tries to bop her in the head and she doesn't even flinch.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. Never seen that before. When I watched Avengers: Infinity War, it was right after Black Panther, and for me, Killmonger was such a good villain. I'm like, how do you top that? And I was hoping that Thanos would top it, and for some reason, I didn't feel the emotional weight of Thanos in Infinity War. I liked him more here as a villain for some reason. Obviously, I watched it twice, and so I was trying to figure out why I liked him more the second time around, and I feel like it's because he was more vulnerable at certain points.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing I'm picking up on, and it just felt like he had more, in general, more levels to him. There was more danger and urgency with him in this film than in the previous installment.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out, I haven't quite fully formed my reasoning why I liked him more this time around. I just did. And one of the great things, before I forget, is that this film kept raising the stakes.
Yes.
You don't expect it to happen. When Hulk tries to get the time stone from the Ancient One, then you realize, oh shoot, like this isn't all going, easy peasy according to plan. Like they've got things getting in their way. Tony, he's about to walk out with the stone, and then Hulk barges through the door from the stairway. He's like, I don't like stairs. And then Loki runs off with the thing, and the whole audience is like, oh my, like the whole audience felt like, that's how you know the movie's got you by the frickin' throat, is when the whole audience freaks out at the notion of Loki taking this thing and just vanishing.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm outies. I'm taking this thing with me.
Yeah.
And so Tony messed up, and they go back further in time, which allowed for another cool moment. Like you had a Michael Douglas cameo, amazing CGI, and then the moment between Tony Stark and his dad.
Oh my gosh.
Like that was really cool.
That was another amazing moment as well. Once again, bringing back the family aspect.
Right.
Like being able to talk to your father as an adult, to be able to kind of say like, yeah, hey dad, I'm a dad too, and have that special moment.
That also sets up Captain America and his woman, like he realizes, oh shoot, like and then he, obviously he stays.
And that was another really good way to kind of close out that story, to allow him to go back in time and have a life and have the love of his life and live life instead of dedicating his life to being an Avenger. I really liked all the surprises in the movie, and it started right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, starting out in that way with that really quiet, nice family scene with Hawkeye, and then all of us know it's about to go down and he's going to lose all his family and it's going to be devastating. Yeah. And then going straight into Captain Marvel coming and being like, I'm going to get Thanos. Mm-hmm. And then he dies right away. And you're like, wait, but it's a 3-hour movie.
Right.
What's going on? You just killed him. And then they just kept on doing that.
Right.
Like turn after turn, surprise after surprise. And you're just like,
right. The whole audience collectively was like, whoa. Like, the first time around at least, like it seemed like the second time around, people weren't as impressed with Thanos getting his arm chopped off. I thought that was dope. Yeah. And the first audience thought that was dope. And then when Thor takes his head off, everyone was like, whoa. And then we're like, well, I guess that's the end of the movie, right? Because it cuts to black.
And then to be so bold as to go 5 years later, everyone was like,
right.
What?
Well, what made that so cool was how it took its time. Like that that right there represents everything the film was doing. It's like it took its time with showing you these words just to really impress upon you, like, yo, like a lot of time has passed here.
And I loved seeing how that affected each of the characters. And we talked at length about how that affected Thor, but seeing how that affected Black Widow and it just kind of made her desire bringing everyone back so much more because she had more purpose. Iron Man being able to have that family, because he came out the best after the first snap. He has so much more to live for now.
Right.
And everyone else lost.
That's what makes it so emotional, though. It's like he's giving up everything so everyone else can have everything.
Exactly. That's why it's so heartbreaking.
The kiss at the very, very end of the movie, I thought was one of the sweetest kisses I've seen on screen. They did a very sentimental, very old school kind of kiss, very gentle, and then it cuts to black at the perfect moment. And it's like, wow. The last thing I'm going to say is I really liked how Chris Evans performed as an old guy. That could have went south very, very easily. And I was actually impressed.
Yeah, he was totally believable.
His movement, like... I forgot to mention, I love the soundtrack in this. Every time they used soundtrack music, like not movie score, but soundtrack music, I thought they were perfect choices.
Yeah.
Like when Hulk walks up, Ant-Man has his taco and all the stuff flies out of it. Hulk walks up with his tacos and gives it to Ant-Man, and there's this music play. I don't know what that song is, but then it cuts to Hulk's in the back of the truck that's dragging on the concrete. Whatever that song was, I'm like, this is such an awesome song. Like anytime they had soundtrack music in there, I was like, this is a beautiful song to use. I'm so glad they did this. So the acting, the action, the way it's shot, the music, the characters, the arcs in the story, all around, it's like, this is just one of the most solid movies I've ever seen, ever. So very, very happy. And I hope you all loved it just as much as we did. If it's not obvious already, I mean, this is getting a straight up 5 out of 5 Jaby heads. You guys, those are all our thoughts. Thanks so much for listening to us rant about this film. And I want to hear your thoughts on our thoughts, your thoughts on the film in the comments below. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell icon so you get notified every time we drop a new video. Check out our other reactions, reviews, short films, vlogs, interviews. I am Jaby KOAY. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.